going, everybody? This is Dave Meltzer. We're going to be here for the next 2 hours talking pro wrestling and mixed martial arts. We got Brian Alvarez here. We're going to talk, obviously, about just a lot of different subjects. Chris Benoit, the media fallout, which will continue tomorrow. I know Larry King, Nancy Grace, and Glenn Beck are all doing stuff. I don't know about others, but I presume several others are. Just haven't heard about them yet. So, anyway, that stuff's going to continue. Larry King's going to have John Cena, Bret Hart, and Chris Jericho on. And, of course, last night was UFC in Sacramento. I was at the show, and some interesting news out of that. And kind of a disappointing show to me, actually, Brian. What was your thoughts on that one?
I didn't think it was disappointing. I don't think it was the best UFC that there's ever been, but I enjoyed myself. I think a Sean Sherk match, I don't know, that one sort of took the entire show down for me, but believe me, I've seen far more boring fights than that one.
Some people really liked that, and then in the arena, it was weird because at some points, that was the weirdest crowd I've ever seen at a show. I mean, you just didn't know what they were going to react. I mean, I remember in the Nogueira Heath Herring fight, the guys who I was with were just going like, how many seconds before they start booing these guys? And this is after they gave Nogueira this incredible reaction when he came out. And, I mean, it was, 30, 45 seconds of sparring, and, then they started the booing. And, they booed a lot of the fights. And Tito and Rashad, they weren't going to boo them no matter what they did. It was like that fight was electric. I mean, not as electric as the fights in San Jose a couple weeks ago, but more electric than most.
Well, I remember looking at the card, and it was called Stacked, and I think for a lot of hardcore UFC fans or MMA fans, it was probably pretty stacked, but from the standpoint of just your average guy that watches some UFC on TV, to me there was only one fight, and it was a Tito fight.
You're right. You're in the building. In the building, it's the same thing. Those two guys and Nogueira were the only ones that the people were really there. I mean, they kind of like Anderson Silva. They didn't even know who Marquardt was. I mean, there was very little reaction to him. And
yeah.
But anyway, go ahead. It was really that match, and Evans to me was only a star because he was fighting Tito.
Yeah, I mean that's the way that I saw it, and I don't know. I think maybe 500,000 buys if they're lucky, probably even less than that. And
I don't sense it. Maybe.
Yeah, it's just I thought this was going to be a big one going in, and it really hit me the last couple of days that it really wasn't that big.
Yeah, I think that, one of the reasons I say that also is because I didn't see, like, the mainstream hype in the last couple of days that you need to really put a show over the top.
Yeah.
I mean, you had your, UFC fans knew about it if you watched Spike, but the stuff that really makes the difference is either when you have that super grudge, like the Shamrock Ortiz thing, or, the Hughes Gracie, and this didn't have that, or you have, like just that stuff that Jackson and Liddell had a couple, at the end of May, where there's just so much buzz mainstream on it that people are that aren't even fans are going to go like, well, what is this? This is a big thing, this weekend, so let's watch it. And I didn't sense that, the fight last night was the big sports event of the weekend, so to speak. We're going to be joined by Konnan later in the show, who has been all over the media, and there's actually a lot to talk to him about between his health, his quitting TNA, and his media activities. And actually, Brian, what's your thoughts on the media this week? I think that it's been a lot better than last week, anyway.
Yeah, I think that the TV stuff has been better. The TV stuff the first week was really horrible, but I think I actually was pretty impressed with some of the newspaper stuff, and even some of the magazine stuff that came out this week was pretty good. And I haven't seen everything TV related because there's just been so much, but what I've seen has certainly improved.
What's your thoughts on Mark Merrow?
I don't know about Mark Merrow. I did watch those, and he's a very passionate individual.
He's making himself a media personality this week, which is interesting because
and I don't know.
There's a lot of resentment of him, and at the same time when I watch him, I think that where he's coming from, he's being pretty darn honest.
I think he is, but I think he also. I got the idea that he's sort of got this idea about what he wants to champion, which
Absolutely.
is, I guess...
Absolutely.
And sometimes what he says is, I just feel like it's too over the top. Like he's putting way too much blame on the wrestling business for certain things.
Yeah, he's looking to be the guy who goes to the high schools in Florida, talks about, all the drug use in professional sports, and that is his gig. I can see that right now.
And that's fine. But to me, when I listen to some of the stuff that he said, it came off like a guy who had been through everything in the mid-'90s when there was a lot more drug use, I think, in the WCW locker room, and I feel like it was a lot more.
I think there was throughout that whole company until 2001.
Well, yeah, I shouldn't just say WCW, but just it seemed like he was from an era where it was much worse than it is today, and he seems to believe it's still that bad today.
I agree with you on that, but at the same time, I think that the stuff with Benoit kind of tells you that, as much as you get told things are better, and they may be better because the schedule was better, but they're only, there's a different standard. It's kind of like when Eddie Guerrero passed away, and then they said, Eddie had been clean for several years. You remember that Eddie had been clean for several years, and the people were I just remember getting all these emails going like, the wrestling definition of clean and the real world definition of clean are entirely different.
Yes.
And I think that the wrestling world definition that things are better, as compared to, it's not a real world definition of things are better, because I think that, so many of these guys, not everyone is doing everything, and you don't want to blanket the profession, but there are more than enough doing more than their share today. And I think that any denial of that is foolish.
Yes, but it's still at a much lower level than what was around when he was in the business, and I think trying to.
I would agree on that.
It's almost like he's saying what he would have said if this would have happened in 1998.
But he might not have said that, because at that point he still probably had. One of the things is he probably still had the idea that he could still make a comeback.
Sure, but if you were in a position he's in now, and this was,
I think with the heart issue, he does know that his wrestling days are pretty much coming to a close, if not, for sure a close.
But if he were in a position he's in now, and it was 1998, I would think that what he's saying here, everybody should be listening to, and because it's 2007, he sort of comes off as making a way bigger deal about certain things than and I'm not saying that there aren't major problems in the wrestling business, because there are, but it's almost like he's talking about problems that.
Well, a lot of the older
guys should be focusing on
the deal that they're talking about is the stuff in there. I saw Jacques Rougeau, talking about all the steroids, and he's talking about that late '80s period, and that late '80s period. That was a horrible period, and so many people paid the price for that period. You can't undo the past; you can only learn from it. But it was as bad as it seemed in the late '80s when it was going on. Long term, it was far worse, because.
Well, it's almost like when people ask the question, "What can be done today to stop these deaths?" And really, the answer is nothing. There's nothing. If every single person went completely clean today, we would still have deaths because of the damage that people have been doing to themselves for so long. If you want to stop deaths in 15 years, then sure, you can start today.
I don't think we can have clean people with this style of wrestling. You can have some clean people.
No, you can't. But the point I'm trying to make is even if everybody stopped today, it's like the WCW argument, where even if nobody got paid, they were still losing a ton of money.
Right.
Even if everybody quit today, you'd still have deaths because of everything that they've gone through in years past and done to their bodies.
Absolutely.
Coming up with a solution now is going to help people in 10 or 15 years, not today.
Yeah. That's all you can do, is learn from the past.
Yes.
We have not heard anything from WWE as far as tangible, other than I expect that they will do a big denial over the numbers of deaths, because, again, when you had that list of 100 or whatever, the vast majority of those people never worked in WWE. However, a lot of WWE guys from the 80s and 90s have also passed away. Now they didn't pass away under their watch. They passed away, years after they left the organization. But a lot of them also picked up some bad habits in the organization. And it's not, again, it's like, what frustrates me is it's become this game. Like in WWE, it's this game. It's like, how can we divert the attention? How can we, say like it's really not a problem? And you know what? It's a problem, and it's not just a WWE problem. It's a problem of the entire business. And why don't you just go in there and instead of saying it's not our problem, it's not really that bad, just go, this is our solution. This is what we're going to do. Instead of
this is what we can do about our aspect of this problem.
Yeah, but I mean, just like, okay, it's a problem of the business, but we don't count. It's like do something. And and as far as that goes, TNA hasn't done a thing either. And other than and again, one of the things that has never come out in these media stories, and it's not necessarily just not just the steroids, but on the drug thing. It's what you and I have talked about for years, and it goes both ways. Somebody gets fired from one group, and what do? They go right to
hired
the other
by
group.
the other.
And if they get fired for being no-shows, they get fired with drug reputations, and they go right to the other group. I mean, it's not like when WWE brought Eddie Guerrero back, and Eddie had done that, had compiled pretty much a stellar reputation on the indies for being clean, and everyone knew of guys coming to Eddie, let's go party on the indies, and Eddie goes, no. That had been well known. I mean, there are guys who, were had told people they were clean, and when it was time to go out and party, they were out there partying and they hadn't changed. And whether they were fired by WWE or whether they were fired by TNA, the other company was going to take them, and the other company took them. And with WWE, it's like, well, as long as they pass our test. Well, we've just learned a lot about their test in the last couple of weeks. I mean, when Chris Benoit was getting that quantity of steroids, and during a period where they were steroid testing, and somehow or other Chris Benoit never failed the test. Now we know about their tests. I'm not saying that the company's a fraud, but we know about that they're saying like, well, we're going to test the guys. That doesn't fly anymore. And TNA just doesn't do anything.
Yeah, I mean, everybody has heard TNA claiming that they do drug testing, but
they don't.
What does that even mean? It's like Vince's old joke that if I see a guy with a syringe sticking out of his ass, I'll test him.
Yeah.
I mean, that to me seems to be what the TNA policy is at this point.
The last couple of issues of The Observer, especially the one from a week ago, which you can still get, is probably one of the most talked about issues that we've ever done. And that's all I'll say about that. Anyway, we're going to start with Carlo in Connecticut. Carlo, what's going on?
Hey, Dave, how's it going?
You're going to talk
Yeah, you got to speak up.
How's it going, Dave?
Try again.
How you doing, Dave?
Okay, now I can hear you. All right, yeah, we're doing all right.
I had a question. Do you think there's going to be any changes in WWE regarding the schedule or health benefits or anything like that?
We'll find out. I'm guessing that there will be some type of reaction with some type of change. I don't know what it is. There might be a minor schedule change. I don't know. As far as like health benefits and things like that, I think that I wouldn't be surprised if they put a counselor on the road. I also don't know. It might help in some cases. I don't know.
They had counselors there this past Monday. I don't know if it was a one-time thing or...
Yeah.
Because it was the first show back, but, I mean, they made that step, so.
Yeah. I think that there'll be some changes. But, you're not going to, there's only one way to change the business when it comes to what the people mentally think that they need to compete, and that is to not push people who look like the people they push. And I'm positive, from watching Monday's TV and watching last week's TV and this week's TV, all the TV, that will never change. And so therefore, the symptoms will still be there, and they'll be, I'm just not confident in the big changes, no.
Well, Roddy Piper never talks about this anymore, obviously, right?
Yeah.
Now that he's with the WWE, he always talks about forming a union and whatnot.
I think he's learned his lesson after the last time he talked.
Yeah, he's not going to say anything right now, I don't think, seeing that he got fired the last time he talked, which is kind of like the thing. So, but the day will probably come when he'll split with them, and then he'll talk again, maybe.
Do you have any idea what happened to Tom Zink?
I think I don't know for sure. I think that he was probably threatened, and that was probably it.
Have Bill Apter on the show?
What about Bill Apter?
Would you have him on Wrestling Observer Live?
Yeah, he's called before. I don't know. I get along with Bill Apter, but I'm not sure what he would add right now. If we're doing a show on the past, he'd probably be pretty good. Especially if like the old WWF, where he grew up and everything. He'd be really good if that was the theme of the show. So, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure if he would be good at any other type of a show.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Dave.
Okay. Very welcome. Is Konnan up? Not yet. We're going to go to Dan in Wisconsin. Dan, what's going on? Dan, is Dan there?
Yeah,
Dan.
I'm here.
Dan, what's going on?
Hi. I wanted to ask about Wrestler's Court.
Uh-huh. What about it?
Well, who's been put on, I guess, trial, and for what reasons?
I haven't heard of anything in a while. The last thing I heard was Melina, and that was a long, long time ago. In Australia, where they thought that she was being too stuck up to the other women. So, I'm sure it still exists. I just haven't heard about it. I don't know, Brian. You heard anything about it?
I haven't heard anything since Melina.
Yeah.
Is WWE the only place that does that?
I've never heard. I never heard of it. I never heard of it in WCW. I know it doesn't exist in TNA. So, it may exist somewhere in Japan. It's possible, but I would guess WWE may be the only place that does it. It doesn't exist in Mexico. So, yeah, probably the only place.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I wanted to know, did Daniel Benoit was really killed with the crossface?
With what? Form of it, yeah. So that's what the police believe, yeah. Yeah.
I guess that's all I have for you.
Okay. Is Konnan up now? I guess. Is Konnan?
Yeah.
Carlos?
Yeah.
How are you?
All right.
Okay. Lots of questions. Wanted to get you on. First thing I want is update on your health. What is the situation as far as your transplant?
Nothing. We're just still waiting on the results, which they should come out Monday or Tuesday to see if the guy that is going to donate his kidney is compatible. If he is compatible, then we'll probably do the surgery next week. I wanted to do it this week, but they really want me to be in Triple Mania, and I have to be there to help run backstage. So it'll probably be done next week if the guy's compatible.
Now, how's Triple Mania looking right now? Who's coming in from the United States?
We have X-Pac, who's already down there, and Alicia Webb, who used to be Ryan Shamrock. She's down there already. Ron Killings is already down there in Mexico. They're already down there wrestling, but they'll be in Triple Mania. Then we're going to bring in Rikishi. Rikishi's cousin, his name is Black Pearl. Lita and her band, I think they're called the Lucha Gores. Who else? I believe, Sabu. Sabu actually did a run-in 2 days ago when we were in Puebla, and then he'll be there also. So those are the Americans that are coming in.
Okay. Now, I guess most people don't really know the details. So what caused you to quit TNA?
Well, it was just a bunch of factors. It was just 5 years of building up of just lies, not being able to get enough money, not being helped when it came to my health issues. The hip being one of them. I had already come in with a hip problem, but it degenerated to the point where I needed hip replacement. Their excuse was, well, you already had a bad hip. Well, my excuse was, yeah, and it got worse while I was wrestling for you in your ring. And then I was told specifically by Jeff Jarrett that they'd pay for half of it. When it came time for the operation, they just lent me the money, and I had to pay them back. Then when my kidney thing came up, they said they were going to help, which they didn't have to, but don't tell me you're going to help and then you don't. And just, it was just, mostly at the end of the day, it was mostly the money. Forget about the fact that there was a lot of racial stuff going on there and just the fact that they lied to me and they disrespected me. At the end of the day, it was the money. They never had money, but somehow they had money to sign up Kurt Angle. They had money to renegotiate Christian. They had money to hire front office personnel, but they never had money for the people that have been in the trenches because their mindset has always been, well, where are they going to go? They have nowhere to go. They're under contract. If WWE wanted them, they would have been there, so where are they going to go? Well, now that I had somewhere to go, I left. And, they've had a lot of people ask for their release, and they haven't given it to them, even though Jeff told me the last time I spoke to him, he says, oh, my record shows that if somebody wants to leave for more money, I'll let them leave, which is not true.
Now, did they tell the same thing to Ron Killings as regards his knee?
Yeah, well, Ron Killings hurt his knee working for TNA on a house show, and when he went to get his operation, they did the same thing. They lent him the money, and they told him he had to pay it back. Besides the fact the guy's super talented and they weren't pushing him or doing anything with him, he had a lot of racial problems with him, too. So it was just a buildup of over 5 years of just being mistreated, being lied to, seeing other people being given raises and other people being brought in when we were told there was no money. And after a while, right before I left, I told Hernandez and Homicide, you guys just got here. I've been here for 5 years, and I'm broke because of this place. I go, and I'm not gonna support my TNA wrestling career with Mexico so I just decided to quit. Enough was enough.
Now, in the last week or so, you've done a lot of media. What caused, what's the main, reason that you have done? Because that a lot of wrestlers privately, the stuff that you have said on the show, wrestlers, plenty of wrestlers say that. I think, maybe even the majority of wrestlers would say that privately, and yet publicly, for obvious reasons, no one says it, or almost no one, unless you're retired. Right. And your career, I guess, you're out of TNA and you're probably not going to WWE anytime soon. You've got the AAA. What motivated you to start doing these interviews?
Well, they called me. I didn't call them. But what happened I just felt that, we'd been quiet for so long and nobody really knew what was going on. And I almost felt like we're all accessories to the fact, because if you're going to keep quiet about something like what's happening in our industry, you're kind of to blame. And, I just felt that, wow, all these people are dying and nothing's happening. We're leaving families without fathers and, wrestlers without friends and, fans without performers and, nobody's saying anything because they're afraid to lose their job, or they're afraid that in the future they won't be hired by WWE. And that's what sucks about this business, because basically right now what you have is I wouldn't even call it an oligopoly, because there isn't two companies. There's just really WWE, and really they bought out WCW and ECW, which in any other business there'd probably be an antitrust suit of some kind. But that's how meaningless wrestling is, I guess, to the media and in general, because, all these, deaths are happening and nobody's investigating them. In baseball, you had Belcher from the Baltimore Orioles die because of ephedra, and next thing you know, ephedrine was off the shelves. Remember, all the wrestlers used to take stackers, which had ephedrine in it, and because one guy died, and, we've had a bunch of guys die and nobody does anything about it. So I just thought that if I spoke, maybe it would raise some awareness, and out of that awareness, maybe somebody in some power-making position would maybe try to step in and investigate or regulate the industry.
Have you gotten any heat from people, or congratulations, or what kind of reaction have you gotten from your friends?
A little bit of both, So, there's still the wrestlers that they're thinking, we don't want the light, on us. We don't want the spotlight. We don't want people finding out what we're really about. And I'm thinking to myself, bro, this is going to save lives. This is going to help your body in the future. Maybe we won't have to be on the road so many days a year. There's no other sport that I can think of that's year-round. Maybe something like tennis or golf, but, they're not even one-fourth as physical as wrestling is. And so, we're year-round, and, you've got to take all these substances to stay in tip-top shape.
And, but, when you're talking about the tennis and the golf, they also, even though, first of all, golf isn't certainly, it's physically challenging.
Right.
But also, even if you're traveling and you're a player who travels a lot, almost every week,
right,
it's not the same kind of travel. You go to a place, you're in your hotel room for 4 or 5 days. It's like you're not traveling every single day to a different city.
Right, you're not performing every single day with that physical impact on your body. It's just hard, we're like a different breed, and we put up with it because we love it and we know nothing else, and it's almost like in an abusive relationship where you just keep coming back to that abusive lover because you think things are going to get better. But it's just...
Well, it's an addictive business.
Yeah. Well, it is, and so, like I said before, I'm just hoping that somebody will step in. The Chris Benoit thing started off kind of as a roid rage. That was they sensationalized it with roid rage. But if anything good can come out of it, maybe it'll, show people that there's a bigger problem in our industry than they even imagined.
When Eddie Guerrero died, we were all there and we were all talking. I mean, I remember vividly, especially this week because Chris Benoit was such a big part of that day.
Right.
And as was Nancy for that matter.
Right.
And when I just remember like everyone, it wasn't just you and you were, everyone was, they've got, Vince is going to have to do something about, and it was more the schedule than the drug testing, but it was a little, the conversation went, to both.
Right.
And I remember thinking that they probably would do some sort of drug test, which they did. And I actually did think they would change the schedule, which they didn't.
Right.
And I don't know if this will cause, I don't know what's going to happen from this because my feeling on WWE is that instead of acknowledging the problem, they're going to deny that there's any problem. And, Vince, when he's in that mode, making any changes would almost be a sign of weakness other than, maybe he'll test more frequently. But he hasn't even done that. And we talked about this on whether guys are on or whatever. The one thing that I could say is that almost, and it's, when it comes to Bobby Lashley and Dave Bautista, almost every wrestler in that locker room in WWE believes that actually in the ring they are better performers than Bobby Lashley and Dave Bautista, and most of them are.
Right.
Almost every wrestler in that locker room believes they are better talkers than Bobby Lashley and Dave Bautista, because at least with John Cena, who's the other guy that they're pushing, the one thing you have to say about John Cena is he's an excellent talker. He's got super charisma.
Yeah.
And he works very hard in the ring too.
Yeah.
But as far as the other two guys, they're basically green guys who are huge, and they're being pushed really hard. And I don't even think the guys themselves, when they say personal choice, even understand how much they're being manipulated when those guys are the guys who get the $1 million spots, if you know what I'm saying.
Right. Well, the thing is that I think that, WWE right now, they're just trying to weather the storm. They're bracing for shock. They've been ominously quiet through all of this. They're hoping this will go away like everything else has gone away. And it's almost like, Vince is a roach at night in the kitchen and they turned on the light and he's scurrying for cover right now.
You hung with Chris Benoit a lot, even before, even before the WCW days. What was your reaction when you first heard that? The word on Monday or a week ago Monday.
Well, I was definitely shocked because there's a lot of guys in the locker room that I would have thought would have done something like that, and he definitely would have been at the bottom of my list. I cannot even believe that. He even did it. I'm like everybody else. You knew him pretty well, too. I think, it's like I'm still having problems understanding what led him to do that. And even just like you mentioned, worse than all is why'd he kill his son? And even bigger than that is if you were having marital problems, why didn't you just divorce your wife? Why would you go and kill her? So, what really happened? What caused it? Was it, because we haven't even talked about all the alcohol that was in his room. It had to be alcohol fueled with some other drug. And,
but even that, you've done a lot of stuff in your time. You know what I mean? And could you even imagine at the worst of your worst, or, like harming a son?
No.
It's like, I've talked to, people, I've talked to a lot of people like that, and that's like the line, that like, you can, no matter what you're saying fueled it. There must have been an insanity there.
Exactly.
I don't know what happened.
That's when you're crazy.
It's unexplainable.
Yeah, and incredible. And I don't know if once we find out, everybody goes, well, let's wait for the toxicology reports. Well, that's still not going to tell us why he did it. That's just going to tell us what he had in his system.
How's it going to? Because the thing with the toxicology reports is that, like, if it comes out that he had steroids in his system,
yeah,
they're going to say that, but it's like, maybe the steroids warped his mind along with a lot of other things, not all by itself.
Yeah, but he wasn't a heavy user of steroids, you know what I'm saying? He wasn't really a heavy. I remember asking him what he was on, and I asked him a lot of times, and he was never like a heavy dosage guy. Now, I don't know if a little bit over a long time caused it. I would more think that all the stress of whatever marital problems he was happening, and just face it, Dave, just the stress of being a wrestler is hard enough. All the BS, all the politics, all the games, that you have to play to be in this business, that's a killer in itself. That's one of the reasons you take so many drugs to begin with. Forget about the pain pills, but why a lot of times you take the pot and the GHB and everything else is just to deal with all the BS that this business is about.
You know, one thing that you've talked about with, you know, is a lot of these guys, you know, like Rob Van Dam comes to mind, or Lita, you know, who are, you know, Chris Jericho's another one. When they got out, Trish Stratus is another one.
Yeah.
When they got out, I mean, you know, in the old days, nobody could get out. You know, I mean, everybody wrestled forever. They retired, and then they always came back, like Roddy Piper and stuff. But these guys, when they left, I mean, there was a, you know, it's like they were really mentally burned out, and it was by, you know, I think it's more than the schedule, because, you know, Van Dam and Jericho and these guys have been, they've done it their whole lives.
Right, the schedule's nothing. You can put up with that. It's just all the BS, all the I remember, I remember going to WWE once, like 2 years ago, when I had asked for my first raise in TNA, and they told me no.
Hello, is Konnan still there?
Yeah, I lost him.
Yes, hello?
Okay, go ahead. Sorry, we lost you when we started on the schedule.
Yeah. I don't think, you're right, I don't think the schedule's a big deal, but I remember one time when I asked TNA for a raise about 2 years ago, and they wouldn't give it to me, and so I went to WWE for a tryout as an announcer. And when I got there, I remember Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio telling me, did you shake this guy's hand? Did you say hi to this guy? Did you do this? Did you do that? And I would talk to Eddie, and Eddie would talk to me in Spanish, and he would go, the walls have ears. And I was thinking to myself, wow, I had forgotten how political, you know, big-time wrestling is. Because TNA is political, but it's in perspective. You know, it's a smaller company, so the politics isn't as big. But the BS is. And so, you know, it's when I talked to, because I spoke to Lita, I spoke to Chris Jericho, I spoke to Paul Heyman, I spoke to a couple people coming to Triple Mania, and all of them, you're right, they were all mentally burnt out. They didn't want to wrestle. They didn't want to even be in the dressing room. They didn't want to wrestling. And these were people that had made money and were able to get out. Now imagine people that haven't made enough money to get out and are still in the business, you know, and they're burnt out already, but they can't get out. And that's what happens. You know, I think that Chris might have, you know, was suffering. I mean, he'd been wrestling like 20 years, and who knows, man? He just probably snapped.
When you mentioned the stuff that you talked to him about taking, what were your thoughts when it came out that he'd been prescribed like 10 months' worth of steroids every 3 to 4 weeks?
That he was probably giving it to other wrestlers. You know, because that's how it is. You find out, you know, if a wrestler has something you like, and you go, hey, can you get me some of that? Yeah, how much is it? And then he'll get it for you. And if you have something he wants, you get it for him. You know, so we kind of helped each other out. That's what I thought.
Now, on the situation, like with the doctors, and obviously, you know, this doctor, you know, a lot of the Atlanta guys went to this doctor. He was not a secret guy, in at least in the Atlanta wrestling community.
Right.
Are there guys in every city like this, or are there just multiple guys in the country like this? I mean, what's your perspective on that?
I just think, I don't know, I just think there's a couple doctors that wrestlers know about, and they all go to like, you know, there's probably one doctor, like, for example, if wrestler A knows that there's a doctor, and wrestler B finds out that he can get stuff from that doctor, then he'll tell C, D, E, and F. So a whole bunch of wrestlers are getting stuff from few doctors. Yeah. Now,
as far as like going back to your career in Mexico and everything, now, if you have the surgery,
right.
when you have the surgery, how long? What type of recuperation are you looking at?
Yeah, 1 month. You know, I got to be in my house for 3 weeks. I can't go anywhere. Then it'll take about 1 month to fully heal. And probably 2 weeks after that, I'll be in the ring in a limited role. You know, it'll take me a while to get my conditioning. It'll be a very slow process, but I want to be in the ring already.
Because it's interesting, because to me, I don't know. I mean, like it sounds like that's something where it'd be, you know, hard to just fully physically recover, because you've been through, you know, not just that, you had the hip, you know, not all that long ago as well.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that, you know, I mean, I don't know how much of the AAA you've been watching. I mean, right now, I'm part of the hottest heel faction in our group, and I haven't even touched anybody. It's almost like the type of heat I had with LAX, even though I wasn't really physically in the match. Just me speaking, you know, the political rhetoric I was speaking was getting me a lot of heat. So if any babyface would have gotten their hands on me, they would have gotten a big pop. So, you know, for the last 6 months, I've been making life difficult for all our top baby faces, and people want to see somebody just touch me, and they're going to go nuts. So, you know, and like I've said before, I'm in a different position in Mexico than I am in the United States. I mean, I have a body of work there that precedes me that people still remember, and they look at me there, you know, as a big name, whereas in the United States, you know, I've never really been established or looked at as one of the top guys.
What's your thoughts as far as the rivalry with you know, CMLL and AAA, and how does that compare to, say, like WCW and WWE when they were, you know, like when they had their rivalry, you know, 7-8 years ago, and it was pretty hot, and both companies were hot?
Yeah, well, our rivalry with them before was really, really bad, worse than WCW and WWE, because there was a lot of personal heat between Paco Alonso, who's the owner of Arena Mexico, and Antonio Peña and myself, because Antonio Peña and myself used to work in Arena Mexico, and when we left, he basically looked at us like, you know, we were turncoats, and he promised that there were 3 wrestlers that would never wrestle for his company again. It would be me, Octagon, and Antonio Peña. And it's true, because I actually went to look for work there like about 5 years ago, and he threw me out of his office. But right now, it isn't as bad because Antonio Peña died, so a lot of animosity was more personal than professional. Right now, it's more professional, but we have such a different product. We don't even look at them as our competition. We look at WWE as our competition right now in Mexico.
Mm.
And what are your? I know you've talked about running in the U.S. in 2008. Is there any update on that? What are your plans?
Well, we're working with this guy called Steve Shipp in the United States, who his first thing was to get us on the Vans Warped Tour just to kind of get a buzz out there, and he's already negotiating for us to do some pay-per-view, 4 pay-per-views next year in the United States, and then to start doing real big tours like in San Jose, Dallas, New York, all over the United States. So we will be coming to the United States next year, and I think it's going to be huge because Hispanics want to watch Lucha Libre. They don't want to watch Rey Mysterio wrestling in a WWE. I mean, they'll watch it because, you know, he's Mexican, but they want to see Lucha Libre. They want to hear it in Spanish. They want to see the mask. They want to see, you know, the Lucha Libre psychology. They want to see the heroes they grew up watching.
Now, what is the difficulty, or is there a difficulty? Because, I mean, what's the station? Univision is super popular among the Hispanic audience in the United States.
Right.
And obviously getting on that station would open the door, you know, to any Spanish company. Right. On that station would be an incredible springboard, but I don't think that they've, I mean, do you know, like, is their management totally negative on wrestling, or what's the situation there?
No, I don't know if anybody's ever presented a project to them, but that's something that I'm working on right now, because Univision is so much bigger than Galavision. I mean, they're the king of Latin media in the United States, and, you know, we're in the embryonic stages of trying to get something on Univision. You know, like I said, my dream has always been to have a Lucha Libre promotion in the United States, and it will either be AAA or an offshoot of AAA with their permission. But, you know, we're still working on that part. And it'll be very successful because you can see all these little shows that are being run around the United States, independent shows by David Marquez, and even Gary Juster did a couple years ago, and they did real well, and they didn't even know what they were doing. And it just shows that, you know, Mexicans want to watch Lucha Libre. But you know, we're going to give them the angles they're watching on AAA. We're going to give them what they want to see, and I think that it's going to be very, very successful.
What's your thoughts as far as the current boxing scene goes? You know, we talked a little bit about this, but what do you think as far as if Ricky Hatton were to face De La Hoya? I know some people are going like, oh God, we're totally off of wrestling, but I mean, you're a huge boxing fan.
I don't know. You know, I think Hatton will probably fight Mayweather first.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think Mayweather would beat Hatton, and I think that I don't know. Hatton's disappointed me the last couple of times I've seen him. I thought Jose Luis Castillo, who was the last guy he beat, you know, he came in, you know, really looking bad, and he's not the Jose Luis Castillo that fought Diego Corrales in that first fight. And I don't know. I just think Ricky needs to fight somebody like Floyd Mayweather, somebody like Oscar De La Hoya. I think Floyd beats Ricky, and I think Ricky beats Oscar.
It has been probably the most trying period in wrestling history. I can't imagine, in the entire history of the business, anything quite like what we went through. The only one that I think on a national basis, and not this country, that probably, and it's before any of our times that we could, that might be somewhat equivalent would be when Ricky Dozan died, because Ricky Dozan was such an incredible, cultural figure in Mexico, far bigger than a wrestler, and, he was stabbed to death, and I think his age is kind of like been questioned, but it's somewhere between the age of 39 and 42, but he was the man. I mean, that was, Ricky Dozan was Hulk Hogan times 10 in Japan, so, the only person, probably the only person who culturally would have been bigger than Ricky Dozan might have been El Santo in Mexico. So but that's the only thing I could ever come up with. I mean, even like when Eddie Guerrero passed away, it didn't create a firestorm like this. And, I guess because of the sensational nature of, killing his wife and killing his son. And it's just completely mind-boggling. And, we're never going to know why, and we're never going to understand it. And it's something that'll probably be perplexing all of us, probably in some form forever. Brian, as someone who, again, you knew Chris pretty well. I mean, how are you coming to grips with everything? I think it's been pretty tough.
Well, it's been really tough. The first week I just spent working every single day, and that helped me not think about it. And then the week after was a real hard one, and I think that I sort of had to do what most other people have done, which is figure that something happened in his head, and the guy that killed his wife and his child wasn't the guy that everybody else knew. And I think that's pretty much how everybody seems to be dealing with it.
You know what? And I hate to be redundant, the only thing that makes me angry and at the same time sad is that I cannot believe that we actually have people dying in this sport, and some of the biggest names in the history of our sport, because if the same amount of people died at CNN, 10, 15 news reporters died, or baseball players or football players, they'd probably close the industry down till they found out what was going on, and nothing, absolutely nothing has happened in wrestling, except, some interviews on Nancy Grace and, Larry King and this and that. I mean, something needs to be done about this besides interviewing wrestlers to find out what's wrong in the industry. Now something needs to be done about it.
Do you think outside regulation is the answer? I mean, if you had things that you could do to change it, I mean, what would you suggest? Yeah,
of course, what I've suggested before. You have to, give us either let us unionize so we can have some rights. They say that we're independent contractors. That's not true. If a guy comes to paint my house, I can't tell him not to paint my neighbor's house, but you can do that in wrestling. So we aren't independent contractors. We're employees. And, I would cut the schedule. I've always said before that if you had wrestlers, like, for example, anybody that's over 35 years old or that's been in the business for 15 years, they should automatically have a reduced schedule. And you'd probably still have guys in the business like Nash and Goldberg and Hall and, maybe, guys like that they're just too old and too banged up to be in the business anymore. And you just can't keep running this type of schedule like this. It needs to be reduced, and there needs to be, testing for everything, for steroids, for painkillers, for drugs, for everything, just like they do, like you see it in UFC. They'll even announce it. They'll say, this guy got caught with steroids, and they'll even tell you what it was. You don't have to have freakish physiques anymore. I used to hate when people used to say, oh, well, people look at Rey Mysterio in the airport and they say, I can kick his ass. No, they don't. People look at Rey Mysterio and they say, for his size, that guy's awesome. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Why is UFC so popular? Everybody there isn't on roids. Not everybody has a bodybuilder physique. And, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah. And some of the smaller guys are some of the biggest draws.
Exactly. Same thing in boxing. Some of the smaller guys are the biggest draws right now. That's what making money.
The biggest draw of all time was 154.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The heavyweight division's a joke. I saw Klitschko yesterday against Brewster. This is just boring. It's a boring division, and people have caught on to that. Just like in the old days, you could get away with the big 7-foot lumbering giant and the big Haystacks Calhoun. You can't do that anymore. People want to see, athleticism and creativity, and it's just a different, more sophisticated audience. And when I see what TNA and WWE is offering the fans. It's insulting, when, you look at any show on TV right now, whether it's CSI Miami, Politically Incorrect, whether it's 24, any gamut from politics to drama to comedy, whatever, the common thread that it has through it is that it's sophisticated writing and it makes you think. Wrestling is stupid, it insults your intelligence, and it embarrasses you to watch it.
In Mexico, as far as the top guys, the schedule can be really brutal. I mean, their guys work 4 times on Sundays, 3 times on Saturdays, things like that. And you I know in the early '90s were, when the thing was really on fire, you were doing that. And the drug use is obviously plentiful. What's the difference between the United States? I mean, because during the break I was trying to think, and I'm sure there's someone that I'm forgetting, but when I think of like a major superstar who died, in his prime in Mexico, I mean, I can remember El Solitario. That was 20 plus years ago.
Right.
It's not like in the United States where we have, guys, Chris Benoit, Eddie Guerrero, Bam Bam Bigelow. I mean, it's an endless list that you can't even keep up with. And again, I'm probably forgetting somebody big in Mexico, but it's certainly not at the same level. What do you think is the difference?
That's weird. That's weird because I've discussed that with a couple people lately, and I always try to put my finger on it. And I think the only difference because in Mexico, basically right now, a lot of people are on the juice, which, people weren't on the juice before. I was like the only one. And now you've got a lot of guys that are on the juice. So we'll know about the juice in 20 years, but over there in Mexico, the only thing that's really big, believe it or not, is cocaine and liquor. That's it. The problem is the United States, for whatever reason, I don't know if they have more of addictive personality but the painkillers is a big difference here. You don't see people in Mexico taking Vicodins, Percocets, Loracets, Somas, GHB, superketamine, all that stuff, ecstasy, all that. You don't have all of that in Mexico. They're just basically more into coke just to get themselves up a little bit, and liquor, a lot of liquor. But you don't see like all the pain pills and muscle relaxers that you see in the United States, and that might be the difference.
Is there any sort of policy that you have in AAA or anything like that in CMLL?
No, because if we have a problem, we send them to drug rehab. We just sent Abismo Negro, Mr. Niebla to drug rehab, or we suspend them. We don't, that's one thing I would have to say. One thing in Mexico, if you have, I'll give you another example, Octagon, who, is a super legend in Mexico. He showed up to a TV taping drunk, and he hasn't been on TV in 3 months. And I guarantee you he won't show up drunk. So I think that might be another thing. We don't just give lip service like WWE does, which turns the other way and lets people do what they want because they're big stars. If we see you have a problem, we will suspend you or we'll put you in drug rehab.
Now, what is it like as far as the AAA goes? Because, when Antonio Pena passed away,
yeah.
I remember, some of the, a lot of the wrestlers were scared. A lot of people were going this is going to be the end of the company. And it actually, it didn't happen at all.
Right.
I remember, I forget what month it was when he passed away, but I remember people going by December, it's going to be done. And, as it is, here we are, in the middle of the next year and business is very strong. What's the difference between working for Joaquim and Dorian Rodon and working for Pena?
Well, the thing is that, Pena was just a creative genius, and me and him together, we were just like magic. It's almost like, Quincy Jones and Michael Jackson or, Robert De Niro and Scorsese. I mean, that's just the type of chemistry we had. We got together and magic happened. But with Dorian, who's his nephew, he grew up, watching me book AAA with Antonio Pena when he was a little kid. And I think he learned a lot through osmosis because you got to remember, a year ago, Dorian Pena was just a kid in college who used to go to the AAA shows and help sell merchandise. He had no idea that he was ever going to take over the company, at least not this soon. So all of a sudden, this was, how they say how greatness is thrust upon you? Well, greatness was thrust upon him, and the kid's a visionary. He has no vices, which Pena did. He doesn't drink, he doesn't smoke, he doesn't stay up late partying. He's a workaholic, and thankfully, they believed in me again. They knew that I was one of the guys that helped build that company, and now they've put a lot of responsibility on my shoulder, and, if you look at our storylines, they're very intricate. We never used to have storylines. We just used to have a lot of run-ins. And, now you have a lot of intricate storytelling that you never saw before. And we're starting to get a lot of, these new high flyers who are incredible, like Laredo Kid, Superfly, Nemesis, Rey Cometa. I mean, these guys are just the evolution of what Rey Mysterio and, Psychosis and Juventud did back in the day. These guys are incredible. And, these new groups that are really cool, like the Hell Brothers and Secta, they're just, like, really cool, and they've tapped into that young demographic. And, we're just the ultra rude, heels that have nothing good to say about Mexico. And it's just been an incredible time right now. And I think, Dorian's a visionary. He's very ambitious. You're going to see a lot of changes in AAA after Triple Mania, from production to the wrestling, storylines, the women's wrestling. A lot of changes coming. I mean, the product is if you watch the show every month, if you were to watch the show one time every 2 months, you'll see something different. I mean, we're making a lot of changes, and they're all for the better, and business is super hot right now.
Well, I want to start going to phone calls. We have people who have been waiting since actually the start of the show. We're going to go to Ed in San Antonio. Ed, what's going on? Ed, are you there?
Ed?
Ed? We're going to go to Alex in California then. Alex, are you there?
Hello, Brian?
Hello.
David
Alex?
Brian? Yeah, hello.
Yeah, what's going on?
Oh, hello. Real quick, I actually have a couple of questions. Konnan, I'm not sure exactly what your position is in Mexico, but I heard you say, there's a lot of problems in American wrestling and WWE and TNA, and how are you helping to curb some of these problems in AAA with, like, the politics and the steroids, which you said has just now become a problem in Mexico?
Well, we don't have a big steroid problem. We just have a couple guys that are on it right now. We haven't there's no reason really for us right now to steroid test, because we really don't push. I think Dave watches the show. If you notice, we really don't push anybody based on their physique. The last guy was probably...
There's a couple of the guys for the women, maybe.
Yeah, but they're dancers.
The dancers.
Because they're stripper. That's a stripper act.
Yeah, El Hido and Tocable.
Tocable and Latin Lover. But Granda, who was the last guy that, Pena pushed as kind of the new Konnan bodybuilder type, who was just terrible. He hasn't been on TV for sure in at least 3 months, because we told him, get back in the gym and learn how to wrestle, or you're not going back into the wrestling ring. And, as far as our dressing room, I've made sure that some of the stuff that I've seen happen in WWE and TNA, like the cliques, the favoritism, all these little political games that you have to play, or, we don't do none of that. We just do business. That's all there is to it. We don't hold people back. We don't make sure that, only the main event looks good. Just everybody, if you've got talent, you're going to get an opportunity, bring it. And if the main event can't bring it, then maybe you don't need to be in the main event.
Thank you, Konnan. And I really think AAA could have some success if they did run out here in L.A., because I know the show on Galavision has a huge it gets watched over here. And
yeah,
then
we'll
I know
be there next year for sure. We'll be there.
Okay, good to go. And also I have a UFC question. Dana White bought Pride. If there's a problem with some of these guys getting over, because I saw Kudama Sakurai being shown on the pay-per-view, is there a problem? Why can't you show footage of some of these guys, looking impressive to kind of get them over?
They now have the rights to the tape. They just got the rights to the tape in the last, month or two. But the deal is they don't want to bring everyone in at once, because if you brought in everyone, like a whole bunch of new people, none of them would get over. You have to digest them like a few. So they're bringing in one guy like Guerra, of course, debuted last night. Sakurai is obviously going to be debuting soon. But they want a slow migration in, unless they do the Pride thing and actually do a Pride shows. Although the more time goes by without a Pride show and without Pride having a good television deal in Japan, the more unlikely to me it is that we'll ever see Pride again at that level, or even the name Pride for that matter, possibly.
And what did the Tito Rashad finish mean? Where do they go from here? It seems like you'd have.
They're going to do a rematch for sure. Which will probably be 3-4 months down the road, and then what happens there. I'll tell you the thing with that fight to me is Tito won, but it ended up being a draw. But he didn't really impress me. In the sense of...
He was not impressive.
Yeah, Tito he did not have an impressive win. He didn't look like a championship contender. Tito in the building is a superstar. He was the biggest superstar there. But in the match, when you watch his actual fighting, he never really has evolved to the degree, and now a lot of the competition has caught up and surpassed him. Now, Rashad was a guy who on paper should have beaten Tito, and he didn't. I mean, he could have. He had the skill to beat him, but he didn't, and I thought that I was kind of disappointed because, a lot of people were talking about, Rashad Evans with that, Division I, top-level Division I wrestling and pretty decent hands, and, threw that great high kick with Sean Salmon a couple of months ago, that, he was a guy who was, going to come up. And then when he went with Tito in the first big-time match of his career, he didn't perform up to the level that most people expected from him, so I don't know. But he needs to figure out, like, what he did wrong and make it right on the next fight. Because if he loses the next fight, it's gonna hurt his career.
It seems like Tito's cardio was going down, too. He's always been known as a cardio machine, but now in the third round, he was gassed, and I think why Rashad was getting so much off.
Well, Tito, and everyone says this after the fight, but it is true. Tito had a really bad. Tito's had a bad back for years, but it acted up about 2 weeks ago before the fight. So it's the same thing, But people were like with the Frank Shamrock fight a couple weeks ago, and people were going like, Frank Shamrock used to be a cardio machine, and there he was in round number 2, and he was all tired, and he was about, and when that post-match interview, he was about to die. I mean, But the thing is that you don't do anything. You get a big injury and you can't train for a couple of weeks. Your cardio goes just like that, and these guys, both of those guys were really gutsy to get in the match, but I don't know, there's the other thing is when you get older, it's harder to be that cardio machine that you were when you were younger. I mean, it's no matter who you are, so it's a combination of the two things. But yeah, I mean, I think the injury probably hurt Tito when it came to the third round. But he was strong in round 1, and he faded as the fight went, no question. We're going to go to Adam in Iowa. Adam, what's going on?
How you guys doing?
Doing all right.
Just want to thank all three of you guys first off the bat, you, Dave, Brian, and Konnan as well for, just handling the media as way as you have. I'm currently going to college here at the University of Iowa, and I'm studying this, and it's pretty scary to kind of see the way they've taken the wrestling industry. I've been watching wrestling since I was 5 and, got really serious by about 97 about it, and it's very scary to, just someone who's studying it to watch and see how they've twisted it, but I appreciate, you guys speaking up and kind of defending it when it kind of needs some people with some knowledge behind it. But kind of wanted to get off that topic, though, because that's been pretty rough, and I know it's been rough on everybody, but wanted to ask Konnan about the TNA situation. I know you kind of addressed this in the first hour, but I kind of heard a lot about the tension between yourself and Team 3D, and my question to you is, how serious is it? I mean, was it just more storyline stuff? I mean, we're seeing the fat jokes on TV, and that was pretty entertaining, but, hearing some stuff backstage. I know, Dave, you addressed some stuff like this in your show and the newsletter, and, there was some tension. Wait, was that real, or was it just kind of just, it was just kind of more show?
No, well, Devon is very easy to work with. He's out for himself. He doesn't think about the match. He just thinks about himself, and he was very hard to deal with. So some of the stuff he told me, some of the stuff I told him were shoots.
And did you think, and just a really quick last question, did you think that, I know you said the stuff, the stuff about LAX and kind of just, being outspoken about it and kind of how you guys, you guys were one of the most featured tag teams. It was kind of a breath of fresh air for the product. Did you think that, they were kind of just ready to feed LAX to Team 3D just for the fact to get those tag titles on them before they split from the NWA? Did you see it that way, that they were just kind of feeding LAX?
I don't know what was the exact. I know that he was politicking a lot, to get the titles. Bubba was, and I don't know what was the exact reasoning behind it. I thought we were very hot, and they should have chased us a little bit longer. But I really don't know why they took the titles off of us.
Okay, well, thank you very much, you guys. Appreciate it.
One of the things that how with TNA, I mean a couple of months back when they stopped paying for a lot of the hotels and a lot of the rental cars, they hurt the guys, like that. The guys who were hurt the most were the guys who made the least amount of money. And how significant? I mean, because from the guys I've spoken with, it just seems like that was like the line where a lot of guys went from loving TNA to treating TNA kind of like it was their job. It was a big difference, even though when I watch in the ring, I don't really see the difference. The guys still work very, very hard and all that. But from a mental outlook on the company, was that, we talked about it all as well, but was that kind of a dividing line?
Yeah, I think, one of the reasons you see that the product is so good is because all the wrestlers have personal pride in their work, and they don't want their dealings with TNA to affect, their work. They have too much respect for the fans and for themselves and for the business. But, the office as usual, they'll try to take advantage of you because, like I say, their mindset in general, and you have to understand this, their mindset is you're lucky to be in wrestling. What have you done anywhere else before? Where are you going to go? You're under contract. If WWE wanted you, you'd be over there. So we've got to start thinking of that under that premise. So they don't listen to any of the guys underneath. Their opinion doesn't matter. But, when they took away their rooms, and plus at the same time Sting got that huge raise, Sting's making probably about $10,000 a week. The guy makes no house shows, hasn't really made a difference in the ratings, doesn't really go out of his way to help any of the young talent. People were kind of pissed off because I think they thought, okay, now our hotel and transportation money, because they used, now we have to pay to go from the airport to the hotel, which is about $40, $18 if you take this little shuttle. So, that's a lot of money when you put it together. And then what really got them mad is when they stopped letting people work for ROH, and then I think it's PWG, and then some other promotion in Canada that was using a lot of the X Division guys. Everybody was really livid about that. And, the problem is that Dixie Carter, who's the owner, has her head in the sand. She's oblivious to what's going on in the company. Jeff does whatever he wants with Dutch Mantell. And if you say anything, they bury you, or they make you look bad on TV, or they take you off TV, or they fine you. And, so you have to just kind of, shut up and play the game. And I just didn't want to play the game anymore. I'd swallowed my pride for too long, and now I was almost broke because of it. So that's the reason I quit. But, Jeff has Dixie wrapped around her finger. She complains about him all the time, but yet she doesn't pull the trigger and take him out of there.
Do you feel that it was a morale problem largely with the undercard, or was it pretty much up and down?
I would say up and down, but more with the bottom guys, just because, Jeff and Dutch and Dixie, they walk around and they don't talk to anybody, and I told Jeff right before I left, because he wanted me to tell Ron Killings something. I said, why don't you tell Ron Killings yourself? I said, as a matter of fact, why don't you go around and tell people, hello, how you doing, great match. He goes, yeah, Vince Russo told me that maybe I should be around the troops more. I go, yeah, bro, you walk around, everybody's like on eggshells, because they don't go out of their way to say, hey, good job, or they have this little clique of about 8 people, Jeremy Borash, Bob Ryder, Abyss, Dixie, a couple, and they just talk to each other, they don't talk to anybody else, they don't go out of their way, they're not, so it's like all the talent is frustrated there, bro, because nobody watches the show. There's no money. They play favorites, but the undercard talent, which is, misused horribly. Alex Shelley, Senshi, Chris Sabin, these guys are awesome, and they don't do nothing with them.
We're going to go...
Actually, I have one more question, because,
okay, go ahead.
how did it work as far as quitting? Because I know that guys have asked for their release and been turned down and sort of feel stuck there. And, how did you...
You were under contract, too, weren't you? Or did the contract expire?
No. Well, a lot of people have asked for the release. B.G. James asked for it. Kip James asked for it. Senshi's been asking for it, and they don't give it to them. Ron Killings asked for it. The only difference is that I just straight up quit. They can't make me work, And, if they want to come to Mexico... AAA will be more than happy to bring their case to the judicial system and tie it up in appeals for as long as they get tired. They want to come to Mexico and play with us, they can, but they're not going to win. They might be able to stop me from working in WWE, but they can't stop me from working in Mexico. So once I had somewhere else to work, I left.
And one of the things I wanted, in the last week, having to do with Chris Benoit and some of the newspaper stories, the drug GHB has come up several times, actually. It started in the New York Daily News, and I know that I think they asked you about it on one of the TV shows. And I remember in the early 90s and even the mid 90s, I would talk to people about it, and I presume that the drug use was fairly significant in wrestling. And I would say in the last 5-6 years, so I mean, I don't really hear about it as much, and I was just wondering from your perspective, I mean, would that be an accurate way of looking at it? I mean, because again, in the 90s, I mean, it seemed like it was pretty popular, and a lot of guys were having trouble with it. I know that originally everybody took it because they thought it was like a new bodybuilding drug that, you know, would release more growth hormone and through deeper sleep, and you'd also get high on it. And then a lot of guys, you know, almost, you know, I think there were some guys that had some real bad reactions to it. And then I don't know, it kind of, I don't know, what's your thought on all that?
Yeah, it's kind of weird. I don't know. It almost became passé again because it was really big in the clubs and it was really big in bodybuilding, and right now it isn't as big. I mean, every now and then I've had a guy say, "Hey, you want some G?" Before they go to a club or something like that. And in wrestling, you don't hear about it that much anymore. I don't know why it kind of died down, but it was very, very popular before.
You think it might have been it just became illegal?
I thought it was always illegal. I don't know.
Well, they had the over-the-counter stuff you could get at like GNC until I think about 2000, which seemed to be around the time it slowed down.
But I don't think anything that's illegal stopped people from using it because I see a lot of people still smoke pot and use coke, and you know what I'm saying. I don't know why, but that's kind of funny because ecstasy I remember was real big, and I used to use that a lot too, and now it isn't that big anymore. I don't know, just maybe.
Yeah, maybe just cultural changes or things like that. I don't know.
Exactly.
But you had mentioned something about cultural differences earlier, but I'm still sort of amazed that cocaine is so big in Mexico, and I don't know.
Cocaine is so big in Mexico due to the fact that what happened was because of drug enforcement got more stringent along the border, a lot of cocaine was backed up in Mexico, and it became cheaper to get in Mexico, where before it was very expensive. And so that's how people started to use it again. You know, all the big cocaine cartels are now out of Mexico. They're no longer out of Colombia.
We're going to go back to the calls. We've got a full bank of calls. We're going to start with Alan in Florida. Alan, you're up.
Dave, Konnan, it's a pleasure. I wanted to ask you if you've ever had to defend yourself in a shoot in the WCW, because I heard rumors of you and Rick Steiner. Is that...
Oh, God, Rick Steiner. I remember that, those last 3 weeks of Rick Steiner in WCW.
Yeah, well, that wasn't a shoot per se. That was just him potatoing me. I guess Shane, at the time, I thought Eric Bischoff had sent Steiner to go in there and hurt me.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, and
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, and he potatoed me. And this was about 2 or 3 weeks. You can check the records. This was about 2 or 3 weeks before WCW was supposedly going to be sold to Eric Bischoff. And I thought in my mind, if I start a fight with Rick, first of all, I'm probably going to have to end up trying to kill the guy and maybe get into a fight with his brother. And there's a very good chance that I'll get fired because Eric's about to buy the company. So I just didn't do anything about it. And I waited till I saw him in Puerto Rico, and we were alone there. And I told him straight up, I go, yo, man, what's your problem from that day? And he says, no, you know, Shane Douglas was supposed to come out, and, you know, I just freaked out. And, you know, I go, you never potatoed me before. Why'd you potato me then? He goes, oh, I'm sorry, you know. And I said, did Eric Bischoff tell you to do that? He goes, no. That was it. So, you know, that's basically what happened. He potatoed me. He says that it was Shane Douglas was supposed to come out. Shane Douglas didn't get his cue, and he just started. He said it was a mistake, so...
Yeah. Dave, who is the person? I mean, you might not be able to tell me, but is that Steve McMichael, the one that the ex-wrestler that urged Nancy to go to her mother's house or whatever?
No. I can't really talk about it, but no, it was not Steve McMichael. I haven't even heard Steve McMichael's name mentioned when it comes to wrestling in years.
Yeah, and what about the Scott Hall incident with Jerry Saggs? What was that? Was that a shoot? What was that?
Scott Hall and Jerry Saggs?
Shreveport.
He knocked his teeth out or something. Because Scott Hall hit Jerry Saggs with a chair shot after Jerry Saggs had a concussion.
Right.
And then I think Jerry Saggs came back and attacked and did a number on Scott Hall, as I recall. I don't know, Konnan, do you remember that whole deal?
Yeah,
that was a shoot, right?
He had told them not to hit him with a chair, and he did, and then I think he punched him in the mouth and knocked his tooth out.
In the ring or in the dressing room?
No, in the ring.
And how common is that in the WCW or wherever?
People getting their teeth knocked out?
That wasn't that
common. No, I mean...
Pretty rare.
breaking, deviating from the script or whatever you call it.
That doesn't happen that much.
No, that was a very rare deal when that happened.
There was already heat between those guys anyways.
Yeah, kind of the beginning of the end of the Nasty Boys. One of the things in that type of a situation, a lot of the time is that no matter who's right or who's wrong, the guy lower on the totem pole is wrong.
Right, exactly.
I think we've seen that a lot. I mean, I remember when a lot of people didn't like Shawn Michaels in mid-'90s WWE. I mean, really didn't like him, and it was just like, because it was just how he was. He was on top, and he let people know he was on top, and there were guys who didn't think he was tough, but he had tough friends, but they would say stuff, and people would, I remember it was actually, Bret Hart and Davey Boy used to always tell people, look, no matter who's at fault, if you start a fight with this guy, you're going to be the one, even if he starts it, or, you're going to be the one blamed because he's a superstar, so it's not worth losing your job. And that a lot of times I think that's a good deterrent because guys don't want to lose their job.
Right.
Did you hear about the conspiracy theory that Johnny Angel, some ex-wrestler, said about Kevin Sullivan?
I don't want to talk about Kevin Sullivan and all that because it's ridiculous.
Okay, thank you.
The whole thing is just ridiculous. It's like,
It's far-fetched.
It just didn't happen. Kevin Sullivan was thousands of miles away or 1,000 miles away at the time.
Right. And they're saying the motive. The guy's just looking for,
but it just didn't happen. That's not what happened. That's the deal. It's like, maybe he had a motive from 10 years ago. I think Kevin's moved on in his life. That's my impression anyway.
Thank you.
Okay? We're going to go to Ray in Toronto. Ray, what's going on?
Hey, Dave, I just wanted to touch on a couple things real quick. I wanted to know how you think John Cena's going to do on Larry King tomorrow with Bret Hart and Chris Jericho.
Oh, I think John Cena will make a great account of himself because he's a good talker, and I'm sure that they're going to program him on what to say. I think that I might, I don't want to say, he's going to be the company boy. He's out there, and he's, Jericho's going to be his own person, but Jericho's not going to bury wrestling or anything like that. Bret Hart will probably just talk about Benoit because, Bret's very conflicted right now, as would Jericho be, because, this guy, like Benoit was probably Jericho's best friend in wrestling, legitimately. And for Bret, it's like, it's like another brother dying. I mean, he was every bit, as much a brother. He's more of a brother to Bret than most of Bret's brothers, to be honest with you. And they were very close, and so I think that they're going to more reminisce about, Benoit. But John Cena's there for, I would think John Cena's there for damage control. And he'll probably do very well at it because he's a good talker.
Okay.
But,
and also I wanted to ask you...
If it was a different... And, Larry King doesn't aggressively attack his guests. If it was a different host, WWE may not be so well served, especially to put John on because you don't want John to look bad. He won't look bad. But, with a different host, if you have a host where he says something and the host doesn't believe it, some of these hosts, like an O'Reilly or something, they could, make you look bad if they want to.
Yeah. And also I wanted to ask about Rob Van Dam. He went on a radio show last week and he kind of stood behind the drug policy, saying it helped a lot of young guys out who were headed down the wrong path. And then we got a lot of guys who were going on the radio and television who haven't really been in the company in a long time talking about how the policy is a sham. So I just wanted to know your thoughts there on what he said.
Here's my main thought as far as from 1992 to 1996, they had a very aggressive steroid policy. And if you look at the guys in that era, not just, they fired some key guys, and a lot of guys got smaller. And this time around, I expected the same thing when they announced the policy after Eddie died. I was thinking it's going to be just like it was before because that policy in 92 to 96, no matter what people think, was every guy who ever failed a test actually punished? I can't tell you that. There's a reason that J.J. Dillon, who administered the policy, is not allowed to talk about it. And he's been on the show, and I've talked to him other times, and he just goes, and even in his book, it's like, I cannot talk about this. And there's a reason. It's probably because there's something that has to be hidden that he has to hide, or with over fear of a lawsuit from that company. Nevertheless, you can look at what happened during that period. In that whole period, not one person died in WWE, although a lot of people from that era did end up dying later. But the guys got smaller. And again, when this new policy came in, I was thinking the same thing would happen, and it didn't happen. And I don't know why it didn't happen. I can't give you an answer, but
there were some changes for a very short period of time, but I think everybody very quickly figured out.
Well, and actually, we Brian, and all of us know what the deal is that the difference is the prescription. Before they did not allow steroids by prescription, and now they allow steroids by prescription. So,
which is
in that sense, what has happened, and with the painkillers and everything like that, what has happened is they probably have helped guys that were doing illegal things, but at the same time, it's very clear that a lot of these guys can find a doctor and get a prescription. I mean, you saw it with the doctor from Phoenix. You saw it with this doctor in Atlanta. They're not the only two, and that's a loophole that somehow or other they're going to have to be able to close up, because there are guys in that company. I don't want to mention names, but there are guys in that company that had some very major painkiller problems that were well known, and were not, never failed because they always had a prescription for it. Now there were guys, Masters and Joey Mercury, who Joey Mercury lost his job, so I can't say it's never been used. It's a really weird thing, because what it actually is, the guys in the company will talk to me about this. So we've had this discussion many times, and it's like, I don't know what it is. We can look at these guys and go, obviously there's something amiss, but what's amiss exactly, nobody really, whoever knows if whatever it is like limited to the Vince and a few other people. So you don't know what it is. I don't know. I mean, Konnan, I guess, you probably, Konnan knows as much about bodybuilding drugs as pretty much anyone in wrestling. I mean, he's pretty well studied on that thing. I mean, what's looking at everything? What's your thought on everything?
No, it's like I've said before. It's BS. They're not gonna punish their top guys. All you do, like you said before, look at Lashley, look at Batista. I don't care what Cena says. He's on something, whether it's growth or something else. I don't know. You cannot look like that the whole year on this type of schedule. That's not genetics.
You're going to be doing a couple of shows tomorrow, I guess. You're doing Nancy Grace and Glenn Beck. Is that right?
Yeah.
What type of stuff are you? If you and I guess you kind of have a platform for a message. I mean, what's the basic message that you are trying to get across, right now?
And just basically trying to create an awareness that there's a problem in our industry and that nothing's being done about it, and the way we're exploited, and maybe we can get a union out of this. Maybe we can get retirement benefit out of this. Maybe we can get some sort of regulatory commission to come in and clean up the business. I mean, they get away with a lot of stuff because wrestling, for whatever reason, isn't either taken as seriously as other sports. So, you've got all these people dying and nothing's being done, and, we're not being compensated after we retire for our work, and we don't have any rights because we can't unionize. I mean, it's total BS, and maybe somebody will be able to help us, because us as wrestlers, we haven't been able to band together and help ourselves, and the promoters definitely aren't going to do it.
Now, one of the things is there is a way, and people talk about unions. Have talked about unions since the beginning of time in wrestling. As long as I've been a wrestling fan, it's come up and nothing's ever really happened. If guys, there's certain times, like let's say the week before WrestleMania, the day before WrestleMania,
right?
If you had a group stand together and but it's never happened, and the top guys, who are the key guys, they're always so well taken care of that it's not, you know what I mean? And
that doesn't benefit to help anybody else. So,
right.
Yeah, but that's all I'm hoping. I'm hoping that something's going to come out of this, that the sport will be cleaned up, or the schedule will be reduced, and you won't have to read about deaths anymore.
Now, hopefully we never have another week like this. I don't know that we'll ever will, but hopefully there will not be the level of death at this kind of rate that we've had in the last 10 years. And we are fully out of time. Konnan, I want to thank you very much for being on. Brian, thanks very much. Next week is the TNA pay-per-view, so we will be back on live. You're listening to Wrestling Observer Live on the Sports Byline Broadcasting Network.